I'll help you channel that anger into something that's going to be constructive, not minimizing what you've been through, but validating what you've been through. And then I'll show you how to place that anger in the right way so that we get things done for you.
Welcome to the Restore Go podcast, where we discover ways to restore our relationship with God and others. Now, here are your co-hosts, Biblical Therapist Pete Thompson and Biblical Coach Lynne Thompson. Together, let's learn how to restore go.
Welcome to Restore Go. I'm Biblical Therapist Pete Thompson.
And I'm Biblical Coach Lynne Thompson. And today's episode, we're going to talk about angry men and young boys, right? So you, Pete, used to work with high-risk foster boys. And I was always amazed by that because, that's a hard group. First of all, why don't you talk about how you got into that?
Well, it was interesting because having my own background of neglect and other things growing up made me keenly aware of what it felt like to be ignored or be neglected. And so when I saw these foster youth that were, getting angry and getting kicked out of school and doing all sorts of behaviors, and God reminded me of how I felt when I was being neglected and the parents weren't taking care of the responsibilities of making sure the kids are safe and they have what they need. And so as I was watching them be angry and they were telling me their stories, I could instantly identify with them and how angry that I felt when I was going through the stuff. And so one of the things that really helped is as they were telling me their story, it's like I said, yeah, I'd be furious too.
So you kind of validated them. You didn't say you shouldn't be feeling this way.
Exactly. And so that's what all the other previous social workers, they were trying to get them to, behave better and doing everything that the school wanted them to do and the foster parents wanted to do, but nobody was saying that was wrong what happened to them, and nobody was at least giving them a chance to process their feelings and how they were unjustly taken care of and provided for, and how the family was broken and the things that happened in the family. And everybody was telling them to kind of just suck it up and you want to do well in school so you have a great life. And they're like, I'm so angry about all this and you're just kind of making me go on without, letting me go through and get help dealing with this. And so their feelings and what they were thinking was devalued again. They were devalued when they were going through it and told that they weren't important by what the parents were doing or what weren't doing. And now the system was devaluing them and just telling them to suck it up and get on with life. And so when I would tell them, you know what, if I was in that situation, I'd probably do worse behaviors than you did.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I remember you one time saying to me, give me a kid who's screaming, I don't want a blanket counselor. Don't give me the kid in the corner who's given up hope, because that actually is harder to deal with, right?
Yes, much harder to deal with because they've just totally checked out and they've just given up. But the kid that's yelling and screaming and getting in fights at school and pushing over desks and things like that, that's a kid that's alive and is fighting to accomplish something. They just don't know how to be directed. And so helping them deal with their anger and validating their anger and validating what's going on in school that's not working for them. And so that was an easy assignment for me to work with.
Wow. Well, I remember your coworkers and those that were even your superiors used to tease you and say that you had a magic wand because you would get these high-risk foster boys and you would turn them around. And it was quite miraculous. They just couldn't understand that. And I know you have a secret weapon, right?
Yeah. And it's just,
What's your secret weapon? The Lord?
yeah. Yeah, because God put me there with those kids and the experiences I had, and knowing how I would feel if I was in that situation with them, and the things that, because I'm older and I have experience, I could tell them, yes, I would do that, and I would have done the same thing you're doing now at your age, but let me share with you what will work so that your needs will get met and people will validate what you're experiencing, and I'll help you channel that anger into something that's going to be constructive, not minimizing what you've been through, but validating what you've been through. And then I'll show you how to place that anger in the right way so that we get things done for you.
Right. Because you were in a secular environment, it's not like you could share the gospel. So what different types of therapeutic interventions did you use? I know you talk about car therapy. What is that?
Well, car therapy was really good because teenagers aren't going to have a conversation with you like adults will. In regular adult therapy, you sit across the room from them and you're talking, and they're asking questions, you're asking questions, and you both are kind of talking about the focus of what the problem is, and looking at, this is what I'm feeling when this comes up, and all sorts of things. But with teenagers, especially angry males, they're not at the place where they can really verbalize or have been allowed to verbalize what they've gone through. And so sitting in the car and looking straight forward, and then just kind of talking about what went on and what you're feeling right now and what happened today. And then they're not looking at you, so there's a safety measure because they're not looking at you. They're able to look straight ahead and express what's going on, what are their thoughts. And I'm, of course, focusing on the safety of the road, looking ahead, but I'm able to have my ears hear everything that they're saying, and the reflection in their voice and the cracking of their voice based on things that they're telling me, and validating them that no kid should have to go through that. But since you did, let me help you become whole again. And so I had this one kid that was always getting in trouble, and because this other kid was always picking on him, would say stuff to him. And I shared with him, yes, you're beating up this kid all the time, but he's still doing it. Even though you give him a black eye and you punch him and he has some bruises from, him saying stuff to you and then you retaliating, he keeps doing it. Why do you think that is? And the young man, I don't have a clue, and I told him, he's getting something out of this interaction with you. He's getting something. You think you're finishing the argument, but he's setting you up for you to be aggressive, for him to be the victim.
Yeah.
And so when I showed him, when he finally bought into the idea that, he's the perpetrator, not the victim, because he's saying things to you to get under your skin until you get mad and punch him, then this other kid being the victim, he gets all kinds of goodies from the teachers and special.
All the sympathy.
Yeah, so-and-so shouldn't do that to you, and he was wrong for doing that to you, and this kid's just soaking it up. And the kid I was working with, he's getting grounded from PlayStation, and he's not able to do anything, and he's getting suspended, and at home, life is more difficult for him. And this other kid knows what's going on, and this other kid wasn't a very strong kid, and my client was a very strong physical kid, so he was using that against my client. And so I told him, do you want to win this interaction? But you got to follow me on the directions. But I will show you how to win this interaction and stop letting this guy get under your skin and where you get in trouble. And I know how to make it so he'll get in trouble. And all my clients' name, might be Steve, and so I said,
Because of confidentiality.
Yeah. And so I said, Steve, I can help you win this interaction, but you got to listen to what I'm saying, and I will give you directions how to do it. And I guarantee it'll work. And Steve was very intrigued. How can you guarantee? Because I know how people react.
You had his curiosity.
Yes. And so I said, okay, this is what I want you to do, Steve. This other kid is going to, when you go to school, he always says something sarcastic to me, and I just ignore it. And then he'll come back and he'll do something later, and I ignore it. And eventually he just does enough things where I can't ignore it any longer. And I gotta just pound him. And so I said, okay, so this is what I want you to do. You started on the right path of ignoring him, because as you keep ignoring him, he's going to have to become more overt, doing or saying things to get a reaction out of you, which gets you mad. But as you keep ignoring him, he's going to be more and more obvious. He won't be able to be subtle, because subtle isn't working for him any longer because you're ignoring him. And so if you keep ignoring him, eventually he's going to be loud enough in what he does that a teacher is finally going to hear it. Now, behind the scenes, I was praying that this kid would be very overt and the teachers would catch what this kid was doing.
I love it.
And so it took about 10 days for this to happen, because it was a 5-day school week. And so sometime in the second week, the kid actually said something too loud, and one of the teachers heard it and then started watching this kid egg on Steve.
It's like, because now he's on the radar.
Yes, because before it's like, how could this poor little person ever do anything to deserve the abuse Steve was giving him?
Yes.
When this kid was the one dishing out the abuse and saying all kinds of stuff to get Steve to react, so then this person could be the victim and Steve gets in trouble.
And the other guy gets to wear the victim badge.
Yes. And so what finally happened is he said a couple things, and so the other teacher started watching him in that day, and then finally he followed it up with some other behaviors, and then they went to him and they said, we'll just call this guy Tom. And so they said, Tom, what did you say to Steve? Oh, I didn't say anything. No, I heard you say something to Steve. What did it say? And Steve said, he told me this. And he does this every day. We're in class. He starts with this, and then, Pete told me to ignore him, and I've been ignoring him. And so the teachers heard enough of what was going on and then finally pieced it together. And so they transferred Tom out of this kid's class, out of Steve's class. And now Steve got some extra treats and some extra privileges. And his foster parents were told by the school what was going on. And they gave him some extra privileges at home. And his life was so much better. My relationship with Steve became even closer because he saw that I was an ally to him and I could help him fix real world problems.
Right, because you gave him a solution that it actually worked. And not only that, you gave him a life solution that he can use even as an adult that is going to work to his advantage.
And so it was enjoyable. And I worked with Steve for a couple years and helped him through a lot of things that he was going through. And he was doing really well when we were done.
Yeah. You also talk about PlayStation therapy or video therapy. What did that look like? I know you used to hang out at Costco a lot. Hey friends, let's be honest. It can be difficult, if not impossible, to find a Christian therapist that's true to your values. Pete Thompson knows that. As a licensed therapist, he is committed to providing godly counsel, introducing helpful tools, battling everyday problems like anxiety, addictions, as well as marriage and parenting challenges. Give Pete a call to set up your next confidential appointment online or in the office. Visit PeteThompson.org. Again, that's PeteThompson.org.
Because that was the carrot. Hey, we're going to go over to Costco and they have samples. That's when Costco had samples throughout the week.
You get to go grazing.
So I'd take them and we'd go grazing and we'd go munch on things. And it was, it was an after school snack. And other times they gave me Burger King bucks or McDonald's bucks. And so I'd take the kid after school when I had plenty of those, and we to get him a hamburger, or do whatever. And then we'd do our car therapy and just talk about what was going on. And so, but yeah, I had an amazing success rate because all these boys, they stopped doing, and I taught them how to verbalize. I taught them how to set boundaries and set limits and be assertive. So what they were feeling would be dealt with in a way that the other person can hear them. I used to use this butcher store. I'd use a butcher store analogy.
Okay, I want to hear this.
And I'd say, Steve, imagine yourself going to the butcher store and you get this really nice piece of meat that you're going to barbecue. And you get there and you got the barbecue all warmed up and you open up the package and the meat just stinks. And you're just so angry. It's like, I spent all this money in this. I'm going to go back to that store and I'm going to go tell them a thing or two and demand all kinds of stuff. And how could you sell such terrible meat? You spoiled my barbecue. And I said, that is the normal reaction that everybody would have. But if you work with me on this, I'm going to not only get you a better piece of meat, I'm going to get you a 6-pack of your favorite soda, and I'm going to get you dessert as well. Are you curious? Yes, I'm curious. So I said, okay, you're going back into the store, you're taking your receipt and your package and what it came in, and you're saying, hey, I need to speak with the manager. I said, Steve, you're going to be real calm. You're going to be firm, but you're going to be really calm, and you're going to share, hey, I was going to have some friends over tonight, and I opened up the meat. I was getting ready to cook it, and it just really, it had a strong odor. And then you show the package to the manager, and he smells it. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's not right. And then I would tell Steve, you really like shopping at the store because it's really close and convenient, and you'd hate to go to another store. And the manager, yes, we appreciate your business. And so I just thought, this just didn't seem right, and they're going to be coming over in a little bit. And is there any way that you can, because I just feel like this is not a good situation, and I like coming to the store. Is there any way that you can make it better? And the manager, because I'd like to keep coming back here versus being really angry and have to go to another store. And so the manager...
And the fact that you're saying all this level-headed is knowing that you're a rational person, that you're not blowing up, you're not being rude, you're not being disrespectful. There's so many things that you're teaching him through this process.
Yeah, because if he went to the store and yelled at everybody, then the store manager is going to say, you know what, we're sorry about the steak. Here's whatever. But please don't come back to the store.
Yeah, right, exactly. We don't want you here.
But by being calm and rational, the store manager kind of feels bad and feels, sadness for you that, you're a good customer and just a bad piece of meat and doesn't want to lose you as a customer. And so what he tells you is, he said, hey, go pick out a nicer steak than this, maybe pick out a couple steaks. And as a result, as you pick out those nicer steaks and say, hey, get a 6-pack, or 12-pack of soda, depending how many people, go pick it out. And then I'm even going to throw in a dessert. And so this is all free of charge because we like having you as a customer. And so not only did you get a better piece of meat, you got dessert, you got drinks, all because you were a rational person sharing your dilemma with the manager of the store, and they want you back because bad publicity is so damaging to an organization. And so by you being calm, and so we've had this situation in our own personal life on many different things when something didn't work out. And I shared other examples with my guys, and so it made sense to them. And so being able to be calm and set boundaries and be assertive but not aggressive always won in every situation.
But what do you do when the other person doesn't respond the way that you would hope? Like, oh, go pick out your piece of meat. Okay, thanks. Have a good day. I mean, that isn't give them permission to now fly off the handle, right?
No, never. You never want to fly off the handle, because if you fly off the handle to the manager or whatever, the higher up manager is going to come in and say, hey, you can't treat my store employee that way. This is not sounding safe for us, and so we'd rather you do your business elsewhere. But by being calm and calmly stating what the problem is and doing it in a decent way, they're realizing, oh, this person, is able to communicate well, and if I don't solve the problem and make everything happy here, they're going to go above me to the manager of the chain or whatever, because they're well spoken. And so people have to listen to you when you're well spoken.
Yeah, that's a good life skill for them. And, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about, the bully before, who was, doing the setup. Eventually, your sons find you out. I mean, eventually, if you don't do the right thing, it gets discovered. And that kind of helps people, I think, boys that are angry about injustice. They almost want swift justice, vigilante, immediate justice, But the truth is that sometimes it has to play out, right? That justice comes eventually, but not always swiftly.
Sometimes it doesn't come as fast as we want, but as we do the right thing.
Well, it's as much as it is within your power, to do the right thing.
Because you can't make somebody do something you want them to do. But as you handle everything in your power and your speech, and you being clear and level-headed, stating the problem, but stating it in a way that the other person can hear it and it's logical and precise, you're going to win those situations much more often than not.
So this experience that you had working with high-risk foster boys, how many years did you do that?
About 10.
Then you transferred into another area after that. I know that you were in medical offices. So that background, how does that translate now in your private practice when you're seeing angry boys, angry young men even, and sometimes angry older men that are struggling with this? Are you able to connect with them in that same way you can't take them on car therapy necessarily.
No
more car therapy.
You can't take them to Costco.
Video Costco therapy. But you're able to reach out to them and give them principles that talk them down from the ledges, right?
Well, first I want to hear their story. I want to hear the perceived injustice that they're going through, as a way to understand them completely, so I know why they're reacting. And as I see the injustice, I say, yes, that would make anybody mad. But how we deal with the injustice, either we win the situation by hearing the injustice and then coming up with a plan of how I teach you to handle that injustice so that everybody else will see the injustice. By teaching you how to communicate and share your concern in a way that you can't be ignored. Because when you're dealing with injustice, you want to expose injustice and validate that person who's experiencing it in the process, because they've been devalued by the injustice.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What type of results do you see in your office as far as men who have struggled with anger issues and young men that have struggled with anger issues? What does it look like for them in their life when they receive this counsel?
It's a relief, because now people are used to them handling their temper poorly, and then they can be minimized. Oh, there's there's Tom, he's just going off again. Tom just goes off and he, but we don't really have to listen to Tom because he's not rational, and Tom's kind of crazy because he always reacts at this thing. And the people that are getting away with the injustice keep stoking Tom in a negative way so that nobody will listen to him. So when I teach Tom how to communicate the concern in a way that people have to now hear it, and it's reasonable, that's when Tom wins. And it changes how people communicate, because assertiveness is the key. Aggression or being overly passive doesn't work. Those are the two flaws. And I use a clock metaphor to describe helping people stay between the 9s and the 3s. You don't want to go to the 12 where you lose your temper, and you don't want to go down to the 6s where you're super passive and people are ignoring you and walking over you. You want to stay around the 9s or the 3s on the clock.
Yeah, and you can see how that would be so helpful for children or young teens. It changes the whole dynamic in the family where he's been going off or losing his temper on everybody. It looks different now, right?
Yeah, because now this person's using their words, and they're being calm, and they're being rational and saying, hey, I don't like this situation. This doesn't seem right because this, and this. Where before they were screaming, throwing things, and they were being ignored because of how they presented their situation, their difficult situation.
Do you see also this re-education into how to express yourself helping marriages in their marriage relationship?
Well, yeah, because before, the couple was yelling and causing all kinds of emotional scar tissue. But being able to say, hey, this hurt when this happened, and this is how I felt when this happened, and there's got to be a better way that we can do this, and sharing with both of them that, communication is 7/10 of all the problems in marriages. And so teaching each person how to be able to share something that's a concern in a way that the other person can hear it and actually think about it, and hopefully God will also press the case as well, that the Holy Spirit is reminding us, hey, we can do better in this area of communication, and to calm us down, and is really good for marriages. So, but yeah, what's the word in Proverbs? An angry...
A gentle word turneth away wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the anger of man shall not achieve the righteousness of God.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you learn how to express that anger in a way that is righteous, that's God's righteousness.
Yeah, and then the problem gets addressed. But when we're losing our temper, it just gives the people in power just a reason not to listen to your concerns, even though, they're justified concerns, but how you're presenting the concerns or the problems to them are making it so that they're ignoring you.
Well, and we talked about men because you worked with high-risk foster boys. You probably have come across girls that actually have a struggle with their anger. And girls are actually faster at their words, so they can be, the temperature could go up pretty quickly.
Yeah. And so again, it's, what is your goal? What is, whether you're an angry young man or an angry woman, what is your goal in dealing with this situation? Do you want the situation to be resolved? Do you want it to stop? Do you want to be heard? And if if your thing is just revenge, well, that's just going to up the ante, and you're going to, depending what type of revenge you want, you could be doing prison time if you want revenge.
Right. And probably one of the main reasons Jesus told us not to seek revenge, not to do an eye for an eye.
Because you're up in the ante, the other person's going to up the ante, and you're going to up the ante again. And that's why revenge is never a good thing. But communicating in a calm, coherent, but assertive way that there's a problem and we need to find a way to deal with this is much better than, screaming at people and because that's the fastest way to get minimized. And the powerlessness you feel that's reinforced every time you lose your temper, and so it keeps you stuck in that powerless, vulnerable place that, okay, so-and-so, Tom's going off again, let's just all contain it. But the real problems, the source of the problems never get dealt with because they can't, because we're always dealing with the results of the temper and the things that are broken or the damage that's done because Tom lost his temper.
So what does life look like for Tom when he does learn these skills? Then he learns to work in life, to move through life in a way that he has self-control, which is a fruit of the Spirit, which comes from God. And he's able to use his words in a kind way. What does his life now look like after getting to the point where he surrenders his anger to the Lord?
It's more peaceful. He's more peaceful inside. He's smiling. He's joking. He's laughing about something that happened at school or whatever, and we're joking about that. And eventually, as he's doing better, the foster parent, liked everything, but now he's ready to do sports or he's ready to do something else. And so I'm usually phasing out, I'm in the process of phasing out because it's like, hey, I like meeting with you, Pete, and I like doing that, but now that, my behavior's better, I'm not suspended all the time, I'm going to be able to play football, or I'm going to be able to play basketball now that I never could do because I was always getting suspended, my grades were bad, and I was just, out of control. And now, since you've helped me communicate and deal with things in a really positive way that people now listen to me, my world is so much better.
How about in marriages? Do you see those get better when he's able to control his temper?
Yeah, because now the wife isn't on the defensive and isn't worried about everything that she says, what's going to send him over the edge. Because now he has a gentle way to be able to say what he's thinking and what he's feeling. And so it's a really happy experience when I see him the next time in therapy as he's making these positive changes, and I see wife smiling and happy, when she comes in, and, then eventually it's like, well, we've accomplished a lot of things and we're real happy and we don't really need to see you any longer. And that's the greatest reward of all, because they are able to settle in to a more happy, satisfying marriage. And yeah, there's going to be friction things, but they now have a way to deal with things. And so that's why I love doing this job, because I get to teach people some common things that they weren't aware of and how that makes their life situation better.
I love that. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a job.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We drop a podcast every Wednesday. Please like and subscribe. We hope you are able to think about some of the things we shared today. You might know someone, young or old, who is struggling with anger management and trying to find an avenue to try to find some tools to be able to deal with the situation. And we're here for you. You can always call our office, visit us on our website at petethompson.org. Until next time, be blessed.
Thank you for listening to the Restore Go podcast. Now, Restore Go is produced by Pete Thompson Christian Counseling. Pete is a licensed therapist who offers affordable family and individual counseling in North Texas and online throughout the United States. Pete provides counseling from a biblical perspective. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and visit us at petethompson.org.